know. Why is it people always think we have celebrations at Easter and Christmas and that?
Because I think some time ago I was told that by one of you. I don't know. HPP.
Oh, well, yes, it's true. They have some sort of celebration on some spheres. I think it depends. I mean, on the individuals and the circumstances. We don't have celebrations in the sense that you do. We don't have sort of religious festivals, and we don't.
Oh, no.
You know what I mean?
Yes, but what sort of things do you?
Well, we have lovely sort of musical concerts, and we have, I suppose you could call them sort of outings. We go into the countryside and have sort of happy times, and there's a lot of singing and music and all that, but it's not exactly what you'd call a religious festival.
Oh, no. Well, I suppose some people do, though.
But yes, well, according to their state of mind.
Yes. What's happened to that Roman Catholic priest, Mickey?
Oh, I ain't seen him. He ain't been round, has he?
No. I'm wondering what happened to him.
Perhaps she's looking after little sister.
Oh dear. I'm longing to get Louise into one of my cities.
Bit of a forlorn hope, ain't it?
What?
Bit of a forlorn hope.
Yes, I think so. Don't you?
I think it's most unlikely. She'd have to go and have a bath in holy water afterwards, wouldn't she?
Yes. Now what's happening tonight? Are you talking to me? You see, he shuts up at once if I mean. Mickey? Have you put the thing on, Mother?
Yes.
Mickey? I expect he's still there, but he won't speak because something's making way for somebody. Poor Mose, I feel I shouldn't have had my sitting tonight.
Whatever for? I'm quite happy sitting here. He is quite happy sitting here. And you are quite happy sitting there, and I am quite happy coming here.
Oh, you have come.
Of course, I told you that
Wonderful.
I would come tonight. You think I would not keep the promise I made for you?
No, but sometimes you can't, you see.
Oh, well, sometimes it is not possible. Sometimes we have ideas about doing things that it is not always possible to manage. But if it is so, I come. I promise. I come. I'm here. How are you today?
Oh, I'm all right.
Good.
Thank you. What shall we talk about?
What would you like me to talk about?
Well, you talk to me, and as you go on, if I want to ask you anything, I will.
You want to ask me something? You will ask me.
Yes.
You can't think of anything to ask me now. That is why you tell me to go on till you think something.
No, it's not that, Frederick.
What is it then? That you just want to see what I will say, huh?
Yes.
You are sometimes very artful.
hope I won't lose the art when I come over your side.
I'm quite convinced that you will not lose the art of being yourself, which is always important. Some people seem to think that progress over here means losing oneself. Perhaps sometimes that impression has been given, which in a sense has truth, but we always remain individual. We have our own sort of outlook and our own aspect, of self, but it is when we learn to lose the oneself part and to amalgamate with many other people. In other words, when we are all embracing, we sort of give ourselves in love and in service to others. When we merge, we become, in a sense, more.
What do you mean
perfect.
by the word merge? Now then, explain that to me.
Well, I think merging in the true sense means when you lose the selfishness of nature, when you lose from yourself all the worst aspects that hold you back from becoming a good person, shall we say, when you sort of begin to realize that the only way to really develop in the true sense is to merge with others, to understand others, to sympathize with others, to want to be with others, to become part of other people, inasmuch that you want to share, you want to learn from them, you want to give to them everything that you can give of yourself in love. In other words, when you merge more completely.
But you have no temptations like we have on
Oh
the
no,
earth
no,
here.
no, we don't know, but not, it depends, again, you must remember.
It's easier.
Oh, no, you don't understand. You say it is easier because you think it is easier, because probably you don't realize. Of course, there are not the same kind of temptations, but you must remember that on certain spheres nearer to the earth, to which quite a number of people go when they first come here, there are forms of temptation, but they are not the same kind of form of temptation of earth. Here, it is where the individual becomes conscious, possibly, of himself more clearly, and he begins there. Of course, it depends on the individual, but some people retain for quite a while on certain spheres so much of their own selves that they live in that kind of mental state, and in consequence, though they are not in the same way tempted as in the earth, they have not the same kind of temptations, there is still the kind of temptation, if you like, to become possessive, to become, or retain possessiveness, or retain the desire for self. I'm talking now of spheres near the earth.
Yes. Oh, I see.
One must learn to shake off from oneself
One's dual personality that you have on the earth, I suppose.
Well, yes. You see, you have to remember and to realize when you come here that one of the first things I think you realize is that for the very first time you can be seen completely as you really are by everybody. In other words, you can no longer put up the false front or the pretense. You cannot have the camouflage which the earth permits.
Yes.
For instance, a person on earth may, to all outward appearances, be a most nice person.
Yes.
But that may be partly untrue, because they may be quite different underneath. Here, you can't do that. Here you are truly seen for your true self, and it is a great, great shock for a person when they begin to realize that people can see inside them and know them as they truly are, and in consequence the average person soon begin to realize that there's much need for change. They begin to see themselves too much more clearly, you know.
Yes.
And they are very conscious of themselves. Now, a person can be conscious of themselves from the point of view that they want to be different because they are disgusted or unhappy with what they see. Or a person can be quite happy with what they see in themselves. So on some spheres you do find people are not at all upset, with themselves. They like themselves. You get people in your world who know themselves pretty well, and they're quite pleased with themselves, and they don't particularly want to be any different. They know that they are bad in many ways, but they don't necessarily want to be different.
Yes, I know.
They think it is a good thing sometimes to be as they are. They think that it is a protection for themselves against other people who would take advantage of them. They pride themselves on being tough,
Yes.
And you get people, when they come here, who still retain that attitude on certain spheres near the earth. And sometimes they don't change for a long time. It takes them a long time to realize that they must change if they want to advance. People live in the kind of world which they themselves create. That applies in your world to a great extent. It is true you live in a kind of world which has been created by generations of people, and in consequence you suffer in consequence for all the misdeeds of people who have been unjust or unfair and so on. I mean, the circumstances of your earth life are as they are because of the people who created as such.
Yes.
And the innocent suffer more than the guilty in consequence, because the more sincere a person is, the more sensitive a person is, the more kind a person is, obviously the more difficult it is going to be for them to be happy and to be understood. But
Yes.
those people here who are like that, automatically, because of their very nature and the intense feeling that they have within themselves for others, for the good of humanity, in itself, you might say, is the very essence of the beginning, if you like, of a happier existence.
Yes.
Automatically, they make it possible for themselves to find a happier existence, because they will enter into a state of being which is so like themselves that they want, that they would wish for.
Yes.
They come from a world of cruelty, they come from a world of intolerance, and they come from a world where, well, material things are considered more important than things of the mind and of the spirit and the heart, and in consequence automatically they will enter into the conditions which they themselves would have wished the earth to have had and did not have, but will enter into the conditions here that they themselves have created and desired from within themselves. So everything depends entirely upon the individual as to what reception he receives here or what condition of life he enters into. And of course that is why I've told you, not only for you, but for many people like you, there will be a condition of life which will be extremely happy, because there will be none of the terrible things or the depressing or unhappy things which you find in the earth, because you are so conscious of those things and dislike them so much, and it makes you so sad and unhappy because of them on earth, that they will automatically cease to exist here for you, because you'll be in the condition of life or atmosphere here where those things will not be, only the good will remain.
Oh, thank goodness for that.
You don't know how you have had to work for this. Sometimes you think, oh, you don't do anything. Times out of the numbers I've heard you say, I don't do nothing, I's a bleeding fool, you say. I sit as do nothing, I'm helpless, you say all kinds of things about yourself. But you don't know. It isn't only just in this one life, but in other lives you have contributed a great deal. And in this present existence, perhaps you have done much more. In fact, I know you have done much more than you credit yourself with. Much more. You will be surprised how much you have achieved. In not conscious.
No, thank goodness I'm not.
Because when one does something and is very conscious about it, I'm not saying it is not good. It is always good to do good. But when one does things automatically as if they were the most natural things in the world, that is good, very good. But if you do something because you think you ought to do it, because it is the right thing to do, and sometimes it is a nuisance, and you just do it because, oh, well, I must do it, that is not quite so good. You understand?
Yes, I know.
But that is human, After all, we have to take into the consideration all sorts of things. And I know you do a lot of things. I don't mean just the ordinary routine things that you do. They are natural to you, of course, but other things, you don't know quite what you do. Sometimes it is to do with your inner soul, where you appear to be doing nothing in a material sense. But it is just the intense love and the intense feeling for the desire to achieve and do things that are good for people, that are the most important things. Sometimes you don't do anything materially. It's not possible. But that isn't so important. Of course, there are many things that one may do in the material nature that are very important, if one may be able to do them. But most of the good things, the really good things, are done from within one's inner soul. The intensity of love that pours out has its effect. You don't see the results sometimes. Sometimes you think that, oh, what is the use? Like so many people, they think to themselves, what is the use? I can't do nothing. But the very intensity of that feeling from within their innermost soul has a tremendous effect, great effect, more than you can ever realize, on humanity and on individuals in particular that you are concerned with or considering or that you love. You know, you talk sometimes about the wonderful things that we do. Well, we are grateful for those thoughts, of course, but many of the things that you give us the credit for, though we are in a sense partly responsible, they could not be achieved if it were not for the tremendous love that the individuals concerned, such as yourself, give out, and the faith that they have. I mean, for instance, at the moment you have this friend of yours who is very sick,
Yes.
who has made a miraculous recovery from the material standpoint. But of course, with all the love in the world that you may throw out, and all the love that we may give, and all the healing that may come to you from Francis and other souls here, there is only so much that we can do. We are doing everything that it is possible to do. And I would say, and I think this is so true to say this, it is the combined force of love and the combined linking together of all our effort that has made this possible. But that does not mean to say that we can necessarily cure. Maybe it is to prolong, but what we feel can be achieved by the individual concerned, the sick patient, for instance, who is, in this case, perhaps not fully realizing what is being done from this side. And one cannot blame the patient. I mean, this would apply to many people, not just this one. I mean, the point is that the individual that we try to assist or to help, it is to them that we give all our love and all our power, but they must be reciprocate.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
I'm not saying that this patient does not reciprocate. I think it is possibly that she does not fully realize. But we are doing everything. But as Francis tell you, I think, or perhaps it was Marshall tell you, I don't know, that a miracle could take place, and in a way it has taken place. But whether this can continue,
Yes.
One would not be able to say at the moment. You know, it is, how does one put this? You know, look at it like this. If you have a balloon, and you pump the air into it,
Yes.
it make it inflate.
Yes.
Well, providing you don't put too much air in,
Yes.
it will be alright for a time anyway. But if you push and push and push and push too much of the air in it,
Yes.
it will bust, you
Yes.
see.
Yes.
Well, we can only do so much. We know how much we can do. We know that if we try to do too much, it would be unwise. And you know, a lot depends on the strength, and that is the individual.
Yes.
I think that this soul, she can hold out, but if she can fight and hold out herself from within herself, and assist all she possibly can mentally and physically, then I think that she can be helped considerably for a time. In other words, perhaps for a few years, who knows?
Yes.
But it is a very difficult thing, because it seems to me the poor woman, she has got, how you say, She has got several things.
Grace, yes, complications of all
And that is difficult, you see.
But she
And
doesn't.
you know, quite frankly, I don't know if I should say this, but from what I have been able to gather, she has neglected herself terribly, and she has done many things. I don't say they're bad things,
No.
I don't mean that, but I think she has been a very foolish woman in regard to her health. She has not considered it sufficiently, and evidently, from what I have been told, she has known for a long time that she should not do certain things or eat certain things and so on. She should have been more careful.
Yes,
being
you're
more,
quite right,
You know,
yes.
she should have helped herself. You
Yes,
know.
yes.
But she has just spoiled everything by letting herself go, you know.
Yes, that's quite right, Frederick.
And that is a great pity, because, you know, in life, I don't suppose in a way this is the same, but if you're going to do something really important, you have got to make sacrifices. You've got to consider every aspect, you know, you've got to think of everything, it is true, but put everything in the proper place. But if you are doing something very great, very important, in which you are giving all your time, all your energy, everything you have, you can only do so much, you know, you just can't go on and on and on. That is bad.
Yes.
And then again, of course, now you take myself, I mean, with me, I was a very foolish man too. I realized my illness. I realized the possibility eventually that it was going to be very bad for me.
Yes.
And in a way, you might say that I tried to care for myself at times, but it was always according to my mood
Yes.
or the circumstances.
Yes.
If it was possible and there was nothing more attractive outside to attract my attention, I would take it, how you say, quietly, but it only lasted with me for a very little time. I could not stay with myself for long. I was very confused at times too. I was not afraid, but I was, in a sense, afraid of myself. You know, there was at times with me a sort of melancholy. I would get so depressed
Yes.
that I had to have somebody. Sometimes when there was no one there, I would, even when the weather was dreadful, I would wrap myself up and I would go out when I knew my sense told me that I should have stayed in the warm by the fire.
Yes.
But I would go out because I had to see people, I had to hear voices, I had to be with people.
Yes,
Of course, in those days it was not quite as it is for today. Like today you have a machine, you telephone and say, look, for God's sake, come and talk to me, I'm sick of the death, you know.
Yeah.
But in those days it wasn't possible. Of course, in many ways, I mean, we have many advantages, perhaps, but there were great disadvantages too. But I would sometimes, when I was desperately lonely, and there were times when I was desperately lonely, and I would seek out friends, and perhaps unwisely now I see, we would drink, and perhaps we would go somewhere, and then somewhere else, and then perhaps I would
The
get
very
home.
worst thing for you.
I know.
I know all that.
But you know, there are some things worse than that. You know, I mean, I think the most terrible of things can be, for some people more than others perhaps, especially artists, especially sensitive people, especially people who live so much within themselves.
Yes.
There is the terrible feeling of being, sometimes, not always, there were times when I liked to be alone, but there were times when I could not bear it. It is as if the walls were pressing down upon me, and I had to do something, as if I could not breathe, and I would sometimes leave the piano. Perhaps I had been intent and I was lost in my music, and then all of a sudden there would come a feeling or something of oppression, and I would feel a dampness. I don't know how to explain it.
I know now. I've read your
And I had to do something. I'm stifling. I loosened my cravat. I would go to the window. I would throw it open. I would lean out, and I would try to breathe in the air. And sometimes I would be in such a mental state that that I just had to do something. Sometimes I would do the silliest things, now I realize. Do you know, there were times when I would walk and walk and walk
Yes.
and do nothing but just look at people and think, and sometimes not even see anything. It was according to my mood. Sometimes I would go on a little boat. I don't know if you know of any of these, but there was a time when I was a little friendly with a man who had a little boat, and
yes.
I was not keen on the water. Don't misunderstand. I never liked the sea, but he was an interesting man. Sometimes he would be quite amusing. Sometimes he would row me across the water to the other side. That was sufficient for me. I never liked to stay too long on the water. But sometimes he would row me across the water, and I would walk and walk. Sometimes I would visit friends, of course, on the other side. But you know, I used to do all sorts of things. Once I remember I walked and walked, and I was tired, and there seemed to be nowhere to go, no cafe, no nothing. I seemed to have lost myself. And I see a church, and I go in, and I sit down, and I just listen to the music of the organ. You know, I never was keen on the organ, but I could play it. But I never wanted very much to know much about it. But sometimes I think to myself, yes, perhaps one day I will compose something. Because there was a friend of mine who was always on to me that I should do work for the organ, not only for the piano. He seemed very keen. He always said to me that there was a greater compass, you know. I could never see that, because to me the organ was, I don't know, it was all right for what it was. But to me it did not have the same feeling. And there again, you know, it was that I couldn't express myself in that way. To me it was, I don't know what word you would use, but it was never clear tone.
Jumble of sound.
It was never, no note was ever, for me, clear.
No,
It
no.
always, one note would go into the next
That's
one.
exactly
and that
what
would
I
annoy
feel when
me.
I hear the
You
organ.
see, it used to annoy me. Oh, I could tell you all sorts of
Oh,
things.
tell me, Frederick. Oh, it's wonderful listening.
Once I get very cross with a man who cut my hair.
Why?
Well, he was a fool, but I think it was just after I had had a very bad bald. I had not been too well, and my hair had become even longer than usual, and I wanted it, you know, trim. And he cut it very much shorter, and I was at the time in conversation with some friends, I don't remember now exactly, but we were talking and I wasn't thinking about my hair, and the man was cutting and listening to our conversation. By the time he finished, my hair was different, all gone at the back. I was very cross over this, but I was also very proud of my hair.
I know, and your one beard.
My what?
Your not your, you know, side whiskers.
Ah, you mean those. I never have a beard.
No, not a beard. The side
Once
whiskers.
I have a mustache.
No.
You don't remember? Know about that?
No.
That was very funny. When I first come from Pune,
Yes.
I grew a little mustache,
Oh, yes.
but it did not last very long. I never look I did not like for myself it very much, you know. It did not seem somehow right, so I get rid of it.
But your whisker one side used to grow, and the other side you couldn't get to grow.
I could not get them equal, so I had to cut one shorter.
Marshall was telling me that once he saw you, and you had your nose straightened. You couldn't bear the nose you had, and you were dressed beautifully in some in lavender and grey. I remember he was telling me that one day, and you had cut your hair short, very short. Was that right?
Yes, but I can understand why he thinks that, because
Why?
that is so. But you know, sometimes you must never think, because we are, what you say, progress, that we are not still human. Because we have, for instance, here the good sense of the humor, and we love to laugh, which is good. It is a great gift, and I like for me to joke sometimes.
I know.
And sometimes I like to pull the leg even of my friends, you know.
Everybody says that.
Sometimes I like to think, oh, I like this new apparel, you know. I like to have this new dress. And perhaps I think to myself, oh, that nose, I wish it was straight. And by the mere thought and desire, I can change it.
You can change
But
it.
then again, it doesn't matter. You see, it is a whim. of the moment. You see, for instance,
Ah.
if I wanted to look different,
Yes.
there's no reason why I shouldn't, after all said and done, because you must remember that basically all things are mental.
Yes.
And but then again, of course, when one realizes it is some little vanity, if you like, then one realizes it is a weakness. It doesn't necessarily stay. After all, there again, you see that we must remember this, that if one has had, as one has had many incarnations, obviously the physical bodies in those incarnations were not necessarily all the same in appearance.
No.
And in any case, in various incarnations, one may have been of a different sex, or it may be that one passed over at a much older age. You see, physical bodies may vary and be different, and over here, a spiritual body can be a reconstruction,
Yes.
according
Reconstructed, yes.
according to how you feel.
Yes, yes. It's rather wonderful, Frederick.
Of course, if you want to be a little fat woman here, you can be a little fat woman. If you want to be a thin, elegant young woman, you can be a thin, elegant young woman.
Oh, that's what I want.
Well, when you come here, you will no doubt be very beautiful and very, well, you are beautiful now, but what you don't realize, and this is the most important thing,
Yes.
people are always saying, for instance, when on earth, oh, I would like to be tall and beautiful. I would like to be able to wear beautiful clothes and be magnificent looking creature. But what people don't realize is that if they were like that, they would not necessarily be as nice. Sometimes you grumble because you say you are fat, and all that.
No,
but how do you not know that you are much better like that? I mean, physically maybe you're
Yes.
not so better because you find it uncomfortable.
Yes.
But what is important is not a person's shape. I have discovered that very quickly because I used to be a very vain person. I discover, after all, it is not a person's appearance, that is the physical shape of their body or the elegance of their carriage.
Oh,
or
yes,
whatever
but
it is.
it
What
can't-
matters is what the person is themselves.
That's quite true, but when you're on the earth, people judge you by your appearance, not
But
judge
that
you.
is because they don't understand.
Yes, that's it.
After all, there is great beauty in ugliness. I'm not suggesting you are ugly, don't misunderstand, but there is great beauty in ugliness, which people don't understand. That is why sometimes in music, some people don't understand, some people who don't appreciate or perhaps don't realize music, they say, oh, I love that part, it was so beautiful, it was so soft and so romantic and everything, which of course it was, and it was intended to be. But sometimes they don't realize that certain passages have to be discordant because it is important, it is
Yes,
necessary.
yes.
You see, you must have all aspects in everything. You must have the opposites, the differences, the nuances. You must have all these changes.
But your discordance in some of your music, I can use the word, it merges into the concord.
Well, I think it should. I think
Yes.
it should be an integral part of the
Yes.
whole.
Yes.
Otherwise, it is useless and has no purpose or point. That is why I think so many musicians today, especially, they try to be clever, but there is no feeling, there is no deepness, there's
nothing.
no reality there. It is a surface thing. The same as in your world today, there is so much that is accepted as art, that is accepted even by authorities who consider they know, but a lot of it is very false. It has no depth, it has no reality, it has a false facade which so many people assume to be the reality. People like people are accepted in your world by their front, by their facade, but until you really know deep down inside what that person is like.
Well, I suppose these poor people are struggling
Well, I know,
inside them, really.
I know, but don't think I'm not sympathetic.
No.
But what I think is that so many people who are accepted today as artists in their various fields are really struggling, it is true, but they are not in themselves ready. They have not had enough depth in their lives, they have not lived. I don't mean just in this incarnation, but in others. They have not the sensitivity, they have not the realization of life to be able to express it in their art.
That's
see, everyone
true.
is trying trying to be simple, but in a kind of strange kind of way. They're trying to be simple. They don't realize perhaps exactly what I'm trying to convey. But so many artists say that you must not be so complex. They often refer, for
It's their
instance,
struggle to be simple that they try to shut
no,
up
I mean, for
their
instance,
complexes.
you have today perhaps a man who is a sculptor, and he creates something out of stone. It is very rough, and you look at it and you think to yourself, now what is it? And you don't know until perhaps he tells you, and then you think it doesn't look like what he says it's supposed to look like. But the point is, there was a time when a sculptor was perfect, as perfect as human hands could make it. It was a perfect reproduction. It was an image of the
Yeah.
reality. But today, man tries to be simplify everything. He tries to bring it to a very simple level, childish level, if you like. But to me, that is not really art. It is being lazy. It
Yes,
is not
yes,
exerting
I was just
yourself.
going to say that word.
You
It's,
know, in my day, artists, real artists, it was a constant struggle. It was, in a sense, a fight, constant fight with oneself, not only with the outside world, with even those who profess to be your friends. It is true, I have, fortunately, some very good, sincere friends, but I have many people who were very kind to me in many ways, who were very sympathetic, perhaps, and I suppose, in a way, they were my friends. But you know, sometimes, without realizing it, they were not my friends, because often they would accept things, they would say things which I knew in my heart were not true about my own work. I knew when I had created something that was really important, that was really vital, that was really some contribution to music that was worthwhile. But there were many things I have to do, because I know that it was necessary for me to have money. And in consequence, I sometimes just compose all sorts of things,
Yeah.
which I never was satisfied with. I knew that there was some germ of truth in the music, certain pieces of music, but I should have worked on them for months, slaved on them, to have created something really important from them. The germ of the idea was sometimes not developed. But people would say, oh, that is perfect, that is wonderful. And I knew that I'd only done that particular thing because I needed some money desperately at that moment.
and
And you know, once I tried to introduce some music that was not even mine.
you did?
And people say, oh, that is fabulous, that is, no one could have done that but you. Ah, I say, that is where you are the wrong then, because I did not do it.
Oh,
It
you're
was
like,
done by a pupil of mine.
oh yes.
And they would not believe me. But then they say, well, the pupil is like the master. He imitates you so well, you know, that it is impossible to recognize. That may be true, I don't know. But, you know, I laugh many times at people who, in their kindliness, I suppose, really intend to be kind, but they are untrue to themselves. And it is bad for people to be untrue to an artist, because an artist sometimes can be given false ideas.
Yes,
And nothing
right.
is worse for an artist to be given false ideas that he may work on, and in consequence destroy his real art, you know.
Yes.
Because sometimes an artist, even though he is highly sensitive and very sincere, can sometimes be misled.
By
By
other
other
people
people,
around.
you
Yeah,
know.
yes, quite true.
I realize I waste a lot of my time. I look back now on my life and I think I could have achieved so much more. Of course, a lot has been lost, that is true. But I sometimes think that I might have done so much more than I did do, you know.
Yes, Frederick. And it's a great pity, you know, you were so fond of opera. You never wrote an opera, composed an opera, did you?
I was
I think-
going to, and I was very interested in opera, and I was very anxious to create an opera.
Yes.
But I wanted it to be different in certain respects to the kind of opera that I had become accustomed to seeing. For one thing, I was very anxious, if ever I compose an opera, apart from the music, that is,
Yes.
that the people should be real. That they should have some reality in life. You know, they should not be like the artificial characters which were common more in my day possibly than now.
Ah, yes, yes.
Of course, you
But
know, it was very difficult.
Elsner was very keen on you doing that.
Elsner was very keen on my doing all sorts of things because he was Elsner. but he was a good friend.
And do you meet him there?
Of course, we are very good friends, and I am more than grateful, of course, always to Elsner. But you know, Elsner, should I say this, and I don't think I will be disloyal,
Yes.
I think Elsner was a good friend to me, but at the same time, he was a good friend to Elsner.
Oh, so many are like that.
But he was sincere. He appreciated
He was very
everything.
fond of you.
I know he was very fond of me, and he helped me more than once. Except once he gave me the worst piano I ever had to play on.
Oh dear.
There was once a shop
Yes.
in Paris. It is no longer there now.
A shop? Yes.
A shop.
Yes.
Shop.
Yes. What about it?
Oh, I used to go there a lot at one time. It used to sell certain, what you say, fondants, sweets,
Oh, fondant. Yes.
that I was very fond of. Did you know I was a great sweet eater like you?
I know you never smoked. That's
No,
why.
well, I used to eat sweets, you know, because I did not do the smoking, but
Yes.
because of my chest.
Yes.
But I was very partial to
I love fondants myself.
fondants, and there was one little shop that I used to often go
Yes.
for sweets, and there was one little woman there who was always, she was the proprietress.
Yes.
She was a very charming woman. She used to pretend that she was very fond of music.
Yes.
I don't think she really
He
was.
was fond of you.
Well, but sometimes she would be very generous to me.
Oh,
And
yes.
sometimes when I was a little short of money, she would say, "Oh, Monsieur, it is not, does not matter now. Later, we are good friends, you and me, huh?" You know, it's a long time ago. Her name was Hortense.
Hortense.
I don't think, no, you would not know anything of
No,
this.
no.
But these are silly little things that
And
come
now
to
that
my
you're
mind.
in a chatty mood, Frederick, perhaps you will tell me who Fanny is. You remember Fanny? Who came and spoke to me 2 or 3 times?
Ah, Fanny. Has she
Yeah.
not told you herself?
No. I've been waiting.
Fanny was a very great friend of a friend. It sounds rather vague for you. But
Yes.
she was a very kind woman, and she would have, sometimes at our house soiree, she would have friends, and we would have little music, and she would always supply plenty of food. That's why she was very popular.
Oh, she told me. And she said you should have seen him, the way he ate. and
Well,
ate.
she was very kind to many struggling musicians at that time in Paris, and she would have these little get-togethers. The excuse was for music, which was not only half the truth, because she would supply so much food and drink, you know,
Yes.
because she knew that so many artists, and they were not only musicians, but all kinds of artists,
Yes.
were often hungry, in great need, you know, and she was always very kind. She was not a well-known person, nothing like that. She was just, actually I first come introduced to her through a friend of mine who was a musician in the opera.
Oh, yes.
He was in the orchestra.
But Maury was very friendly with her.
Mary, yes, that is true, but there again, you see, it's very difficult for you to, you see, people in my day, although there was a strict code, how you say, there was
Yes.
a separate, between the classes.
Classes, yes.
There were certain people who were able to break the barrier down. Fanny was like that. Fanny was a person who was quite wealthy woman.
Yes.
And money would speak in those days, possibly like it does today.
Yes.
And she was accepted because, you know, her husband had been an officer, and there was some background there. But Fanny was not a lady. That was a funny part about it. See, one of the funniest things about Fanny was that she would love to pretend to be a lady.
Oh, yes.
But she never fooled anybody. But she was sweet because she was funny.
Yes.
She speak to you, huh?
Oh, yes, she came 2 or 3 times and said we
Ah,
were great
Fanny.
friends and we quarrelled
Oh, we
over
quarreled.
hats.
Oh, we quarreled about all sorts of things. It wasn't just only hats. She would quarrel about men, She would quarrel about all sorts of things. She had a bird. She ever tell you about the bird?
Bird? No, no.
Well, she had a bird that was a very rude bird. It would speak all sorts of things.
Yes.
And Fanny, you know, she did not always realize that she would sometimes repeat things as one does without
Yes.
thinking, and the bird would imitate. And sometimes when you would go to a house, the bird would say something, and it would make everyone be so surprised, because it is obviously something Fanny had been saying about someone. It was very amusing, but everyone took it in the joke, because everyone would say, I wonder what the bird is going to say tonight.
Oh, yeah.
You know, she was very funny. She had this bird for many years.
Oh.
She had a very nice house, and it was beautifully appointed.
Yes.
But as I say, she cultivates society, but certain members of society would go, but she was not accepted in some part, you know, some society.
Mm. Oh.
She was a very sweet woman, but she was a very kind woman, and she was very good to the artists.
Oh, very sweet of her to come and talk to me. She's been 2 or 3 times.
She did not tell you about Nanine.
Who?
Nanine.
Nanny? No.
Nanine.
No.
No, she probably would not tell you about Nanine.
Who's that?
Nanine was a maid that she had for many years.
Oh, yes.
Who was so kind to everybody. Oh,
Yeah,
things
okay.
that we have happened, that we have done, you know. We laugh, of course, sometimes, but she was always so kind, so understanding. And sometimes when she knew artists had quarreled, she would deliberately invite them there so that she could try to bring them together. Because
You and Liz had a terrible quarrel once, I remember.
well, that is true, but, but you know, sometimes we thrived on quarrels for a time.
Yes, of course.
Because, you know, when you are very fond of someone, when you love someone very much and you admire them very much, sometimes you can't help it because you speak openly, possibly more so to them than you would to anyone else. And sometimes your forthrightness would upset them a little, and they would be perturbed or upset about it, and perhaps they would be like a child, you know, they would pout and not want to speak to you.
Yes.
But Fanny could often bring people together. She was very good. She'd bring many people together, and you know, I feel I owe her a great deal. But then I always find, looking back in my last incarnation, I owe many women a great deal. In fact, I don't think I would have existed. Well, of course, I couldn't have existed if it hadn't been for a woman that bore me, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
Women are always good for me.
Yes, they are.
They were always good for me, but sometimes they were bad for me.
I don't like women as a rule.
No.
Anyway,
but,
the women, you were sort of man that wanted attention, looking after, delicate, and
oh,
so
I
on.
know. I got all that until the end.
Where was Marie when you passed over? She wasn't anywhere near, was she?
No, that was not so. She was not possibly near.
No.
Neither was Fanny.
Fanny wasn't with you.
Many people had died, and many people had gone away. Many people had lost their touch with me. Europe was a different place,
Yes.
and it was more difficult to get about, you know. Today you think nothing. In 2 or 3 hours you can be
I know. When
anywhere.
I read in the
But in
days,
those days it meant several days carriage drive.
you used to call them, what did you call them?
Call what?
The journeys you used to take. I forget now what they were called. A special name you had for the journeys you had to take by coach and so on. Anyway,
Special journey.
never mind, don't bother.
You mean it was a funny name? It was a joke?
No, not a joke. They were called that name. Oh, never mind, don't remember. You just talk about things you do remember.
No. You know, I like very much sometimes when I can come and just be myself.
It's lovely,
I
Frédéric.
get a lot of fun from it too, because I think of things as I sometimes come to earth like this,
Yes.
talk with you, that I've forgotten, you know, all sorts
Yes.
of little things that no longer, perhaps in a way, have any bearing. Of course, they have no bearing on my life now, but they were important things at the time, and they were very happy things often. And I am always grateful. Although one may seem to forget things, and in a way one does forget things here, obviously, as one progresses, one's bound to. But within one's inner soul, one is ever conscious of all the kindness and the goodness and the love from people. It is as if it all has become so, I don't know, so tremendous that it carries one on. I think we are carried on the wings of love. I'm sure of it, that none of us can achieve anything, none of us can become anything, unless it is through the efforts of others and our thoughts, not always our material things, but the thoughts and the love that people give to us. You know, I was fortunate. Sometimes you may think, reading my life, as you have done so many times, that I was a most unfortunate man. That in many ways I was most fortunate, that I did make the friends and have the companions that I have. It is true, I had my heartbreak and my disappointments. That is human, that is life. But one must be grateful for what little one has from time to time, and I have in many ways a great deal. My health was my main problem.
Yes.
I suppose if my health had been stronger, life perhaps would have been extended for me and I would have achieved much more. But then perhaps it was better so. Who knows? All I know is that I am grateful for everything that I've experienced in any incarnation, not just the last one, but in every one, and in all the people that have been part of my life or lives, and all that has been contributed by them to me and myself to them. I just feel that it does not matter, in a way, the number of years. People are always saying, oh, I'm getting, I wish I could be young again, or people say, I'm afraid to get old, and people make all sorts of things that they say. Actually, what is important, it is not how old you are or how many years you may become. It is what you are inside you and what you may have achieved, not for yourself, but for the good of others. The love that you give out, that is the important thing. It is not in time that matters, but in quality, in effort. You know?
Yes.
I don't put this very well, but I feel it very strong.
Yes.
You know, you and me,
Yes.
you don't know this fully, you still don't believe. You are a silly woman, I can't help it. But you know, you and I have been closely entwined many times. But when you come here, as you have already been told, you will understand what you cannot possibly understand now, that we are linked by strong ties of love, which have withstood all manner of tastes, all manner of stress, and we have, in consequence, achieved more than perhaps even I know, and I certainly don't know. What matters is that we are together. Even now, you perhaps don't even see this, but you can't even understand the miracle of this, because it is in a sense a miracle, I suppose, because we don't understand it properly. But the point is that there is something that you have always felt and always known within your inner soul that must be. You perhaps don't accept it, but it is true. This oneness that we share, this link that is so strong that nothing can break. I have tried to explain this, and it is because it is not just in this one present incarnation, it is because of many previous ones. When we come together here, it will be in a perfect sense, and there will be no sort of unhappiness of any description, because no one will suffer because of it. You see, in your world, often when there seems to be perfect union, it is not perhaps always as perfect as it seems. And secondly, often certain people's happiness is often at the expense of other people's. Here that doesn't happen. Here there is complete happiness because there is complete understanding, there's complete knowledge, complete realization, and we are not selfish and we are not possessive. We give freely and we accept freely. There is no disgrace in accepting. In your world sometimes people have a wrong idea of accepting. Sometimes people do not like to accept. I don't only mean just love, but in many different senses. They think it is beneath their dignity, that it is wrong, or that actually one should realize it is as good to accept as it is to give. And in so many different ways, here we realize that the perfect love, the perfect union, the perfect realization is when people can be completely free in themselves, in their giving and their accepting. Here there is perfect, complete harmony, as if there is a blending of which is so natural in itself that nothing can mar it, nothing can affect it, because it is perfect love. That is all that matters. It is something that you and I share with untold numbers of people, and there will be a perfect realization of this eventually for you.
Well, why do they call it unique? Valentino, when he came, and Liszt also, and even Dr. Marshall, they all said it's very unique.
I think they mean it is unique inasmuch that although this happens with other people, it takes a long time. You see, there are many stages of evolution, there are many stages of development here.
Yes.
And it is only perhaps a few that one may know of who have achieved this. What I'm trying to say is that there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people in the stage of evolution approaching and working towards that goal, but they may know very few who have achieved it.
Yes.
It doesn't mean to say there are not untold millions who have, beyond their knowledge, you see. Well, you see, that is something that, again, must be a little confusing, but at the same time should not be confusing, because after all, we who may live on a certain sphere of evolution, we may not know of certain individuals or peoples who may have achieved a higher state of being. We know they exist, but we do not necessarily know them. We do not know what that state of being really is like, because we ourselves have not reached that stage of perfection. Yes. And so it is that obviously people will come from, and even people who know one well, will come and say, you know, so-and-so, this is absolutely unique. It may be unique to them because they do not know of others who have achieved it.
Yes,
but
yes.
it doesn't know the fact that untold millions have. Now, poor Valentino, he has not achieved that yet, from the point of view that he has not found the perfect partner. He thought he may have found it when on earth and was disillusioned. Yes. But then again, you see, it may be that he is not such an old soul. I think he has achieved a great deal, that he has gone through many, many stages of evolution. But I think